to another episode of the Fanzone podcast. Your home for all things Bolton Wanderers, up the Trotters, the Northwest's #1 podcast.
Good evening then, ladies and gents. Welcome back to another episode of the Fanzone podcast. It is a pleasure to be back with you all on a fine Wednesday evening. Thank you all for tuning in. There's a couple of you in the live chat already, so a very warm welcome to you, David, as a channel member, and especially warm welcome to you. But it is defeat on the road, first in a little while. I'd almost forgotten what it feels like, but here we are after a tough away visit to Bristol Rovers. Not the best day out for us Whites, but here we are. I mean, it makes sense to just get stuck in, and we'll digest what happened yesterday or last night. I couldn't get my words out then.
Brilliant.
Well, just as I struggled to find the words last night, Bolton Wanderers struggled to keep the ball out of their own net. Chris, it makes sense to hand over to you. What did you make of last night's game?
Well, what I saw of it, which obviously is the same for everybody, apart from those who were there, absolutely hats off. I think, was it Macaulay Roberts saying he's tired from the trip to Bristol? I'm sure there's plenty of others who ventured down to the Mem last night. Kudos to you all. Well done. Phenomenal numbers again. Not going to get too down on it. As Leslie said, just a blip. I was furious last night because I've seen what we're capable of under Schumacher, as we all have. Obviously, the prime example being last Tuesday against Birmingham. But, yeah, I just think it was just a game too many. And I think there was definitely an element of fatigue amongst the team, which contributed to lapses in concentration, slipping back into bad habits and older habits. Still early days. It's still only 5 weeks since the new manager came in. So I'm not getting too down on it. I was gutted last night because obviously it was an opportunity missed with Wrexham slipping up. But Saturday's the big one. If we can beat Stockport on Saturday, when we beat Stockport on Saturday, we will go above them. And we're still in a really strong position. Obviously, Charlton are playing our friends up the road in the form of Wigan at Charlton. So not an easy game, but hopefully Ryan Lowe, the new manager of Wigan Athletic, will create a new manager bounce, not an ozone bounce, but a new manager bounce. So as Colin said last night, when he was trying to reassure me, plenty more twists and turns to come this season. And I'm not getting too downhearted because we've got the right man in charge. So we move, kids, we move.
We do indeed. Dan, hand over to you and you can introduce the star of the show for this evening.
Yeah, obviously with Ange falling unwell late in the day and being a late call-up, myself and the cute little Lennon Joseph is making a cameo tonight, named after John, not Neil. Just thought I'd make that clear. Even though he did do a half-decent job for us, Mr. Lennon. Yeah, I agree with what Chris said. I think it was a bit of a game too far. Fatigue, Saturday, Tuesday does have its downsides. Probably a game too far in terms of what we have been accustomed to over recent weeks. And let's not forget, it was a rearranged fixture from December the 6th with all the high winds and stuff. So although we had probably a better chance to put a result on the board, for the want of a better phrase, given the fact that during December we were probably in a rut of form under the previous regime. But as we said at the weekend, there's going to be lots of twists and turns. You know, there's 10 cup finals now to go. we are going to lose football matches. We are going to drop points. It's what happens. Everybody will at this stage of the season once nerves kick in and, the scoreboard pressure, leaderboard pressure, league table pressure all kicks in. All we can do is bounce back, and I'm sure we will on Saturday. 12:30 kick-off in front of the TV cameras, local derby. Beat them, go above them. What more motivation do we need?
Absolutely. They've certainly got a chance to put things right with 3 huge games on the horizon. But as you said, plenty more cup finals still to come, and lots of football still to be played. Chris, who'd have thought Colin would be the first person to reassure someone that all hope is not lost, but there you have it. It's not all over. There is still lots to play for, and there are plenty of opportunities to pick up points. But with the closing stages of the season upon us, Chris, what are your hopes now for the rest of the season?
It's very much the same as I said on Sunday. Let's consolidate into the playoff, take that bit of pressure away by making sure that we are in there and we stay there. There are gaps, but they keep closing once you have these little blips. But if we can kick on now, obviously the next 3 games are a bit tasty in the form of Stockport at home and Blackpool and Wigan away. There's some games there that historically we would struggle in, but I feel that with a bit of a rest and a bit of recuperation that we can kick on. But yeah, I think the objective now is to stabilise in the playoffs and then just look at carry on winning in our own games. And if results go in our favour elsewhere and we can vie for second place, and why not? It's still there. It's still achievable. We're still 8 points off it. 10 games to go. It's definitely doable. But last night was just a bit of a you've got to really kick on and win pretty much every game, or certainly not lose any games to achieve that. So it does make life a little bit more difficult. But yeah, consolidate playoffs and see what happens.
We said it, didn't we? Yeah, we said it today, didn't we? I think although top 2 is still within our sights, I think given the amount of goals we ship, and we have shipped all season, that's been our downfall. Obviously, the goal difference. And if you look at the league table, I think we've conceded the most out of the top 10, 12 teams. So that's going to be ultimately the downfall in terms of trying to get top 2. Scoring 2 goals against a team like Bristol Rovers, no disrespect to Bristol Rovers, I thought they were up for it last night. But usually 2 goals away from home at Bristol Rovers should be enough to win the game. So to concede 3 again, it is going to be that. So as Chris says, he's right. We just need to consolidate the playoffs, create a gap, cement our position in there, and then we've got a lottery of 2-3 games come the end of the season, of which we've got the experience of the squad to handle them situations, given the fact that we've been there for the last 2 seasons. So I'm not ruling out top 2 by any stretch. It's still there. Wrexham lost last night. There are going to be teams that drop points, but as Chris says, we can just do what we do. Charlton appear to be coming up on the rails. They've come up out of nowhere. 8 wins out of the last 11, and their running seems quite fair to them. Nathan Jones isn't a mug by any stretch, but let's just do what we need to do. The next 3 games are huge. Some local derbies in there against Stockport in and around us. If we win our football matches, we'll take care of our own business. We won't need to worry about other teams.
I liked Schumacher's attitude post-match last night. I thought it was consistent with how he's been since he came in. No panic, no mad sort of off-the-wall statements as we've experienced before with predecessors, where it's just been a PR disaster. It was just, we carry on. We're good enough. The players are good enough. We had an off night, but I'm not worried. Was summary?
No press the panic button, is there? No, at all.
No. Like you say, Dan, I and a few people have said it. Bristol Rovers were, I mean, they've been depleted with injuries. Chris Martin coming back in was a plus for them, but they had a young lad playing for them who was excellent. They were quick. They won the battles, the second balls, the duels, and we were just we were just too off it.
Lethargic, weren't we?
Yeah, very lethargic. And if you do that at this level, you get punished, and we did.
But if we were choosing to have an off day, I'd rather do it last night than on Saturday against Stockport. So, do you know
absolutely.
what I mean?
Yeah, it is the cliche 6-pointer on Saturday, isn't it, against Stockport? And we need to be ready for that. And
we've got to bury that, actually, haven't we, of that 5-0 drubbing as well earlier on in the season.
Yeah.
We've got to get our own back.
Yeah, exactly.
We absolutely do. As you said before, Dan, take care of our own business and the rest will look after itself. Focus on our football matches and then see where we end up at the end of the season. But just reflecting on last night's game, there was a couple of performances in there that I think some players will be more proud of than others. But on that note, we'll head into Fanzone Man of the Match.
Okay, so as Ben says, some performances last night left a lot to be desired, but other ones, some consistent performances as well. Let's not be too harsh on them. As always, put your nominations for Man of the Match in the chat. And when we get around the panel, we'll obviously come to you guys as well for your input and ultimately decide the Fanzone Man of the Match. So firstly, I'm going to go to Ben. Who was your Man of the Match last night, sir? Of the game that we did see, although we didn't see about 40 minutes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I missed one of this person's highlights, but I thought he ran a consistent 90 minutes, was good, has been good since returning from his loan spell with Wickham, has slotted right back into a team that probably wasn't that difficult to get into. But when you're out of favour with the manager, or seemingly out of favour with the manager that's bringing you back, it was always going to be a tough challenge. But I think he's stepped up to the plate. He's delivered some performances that have been exceptional. I think he said 3 in 5 before, 3 goals in his last 5, and I think he's just getting better. And I think we've been really fortunate to have him back. But last night, yeah, I think he stood out as one that put a shift in, and he's adapting to this new role of being a sweeper, picking things up, breaking up play, which is something we've missed. So for me, my Man of the Match is Aaron Morley for the second week running.
Good shout, Benji. Chris?
Yeah, there was a couple. Before I go on to Man of the Match, I think it's the ugly head and reared up again last night. This whole scapegoating thing, and a lot of blame was pointed towards Alex Murphy. Just give the kid a break. You know what I mean? He's 20. He's learning. He's learning the job at a difficult level, a challenging level. Just get off his back. Just get off the players' back. You know what I mean? I thought we got past that. It's criticism, and it's not to say you can't say a player's had a poor game or whatever, but it just goes over the top sometimes. Even though he probably could have come for that third goal and be a little bit more dominant in his area, I thought Luke Southwood pulled off a string of decent saves.
Yeah,
played well. He's been great for us. But exactly the same. I'm just going to really echo what Ben said. Aaron Morley has really stepped up. The bits that whatever it was, 50, 60 minutes I saw the game last night. Well, that's being generous. He looked really impressive. His work rate has been unmatched in that team. So I will also be predictable and go for Aaron Morley. So as a Mozza for me.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, for me as well. I'm going to make it a hat trick of Aaron Morley's. I think, as Ben has rightly said, coming back from Wickham, completely different player, work rate, desire, determination, everything. 3 goals in his last 5 appearances, assist as well last night for McAtee. Can we claim that one? So he has, and it's great to see, because I do still believe he's our most technically gifted player. That first season when he was, firing. He can spray the ball about and hit a 10 pence from 100 yards. So for me, it's Aaron Morley. But I think the main choice tonight is not the chat and not us. It's who's your man of the match last night, son?
Aaron Morley.
There we go. It was always going to be Aaron Morley, his favourite player. So with everybody in the chat,
he knows the game, doesn't he? So
absolutely, everybody in the chat and the 4 of us. This week's Fanzone man of the match was Aaron Morley.
Hey.
Belting. And we will swiftly move on into your next segment of the evening, which is Get Stat On.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Get Stat On with the Statman, back in the Fanzone hoodie. Of course, we are ready, and let's forget about the game from yesterday, because we only look forwards here. So, just before we start, of course, this segment of the Fanzone podcast is sponsored by Jenna Louise at Salmon, and you all know the line. If you buy the gaff, give her a bell. Anyway, we'll move on to the weekend game. Stockport, massive game, Stockport County. 5th versus 6th, at home, early kickoff. What more could you want? A pint in your hand, maybe, if that's your persuasion. But this should be a cracking game. So let's have a look at Stockport, shall we? Well, this is their first season back in League One, and I'm sure you know that already. But they could easily go up again, as they are in the playoffs, just above you. That would make it back-to-back promotions, which is slightly outrageous, is it not? But how do they play? Well, first thing to note is they are much better at home than they are away. And that is mega for you, obviously. They've played 18 at home this season and 18 away. And they have 37 points at home and just 25 away. So that's 1-0 right there. But no, in all seriousness, that is a big advantage for you. But let's have a look at how they actually play rather than just some meaningless points. No, I'm only joking. But still, Louis Barry was obviously the main man, and he is still their top scorer with 15. But that is by 8 goals from the next player. So the next player in the list of top scorers in the league has just 7. So, maybe they're lacking a little bit of quality finishing since he left, because obviously he was mint. But apart from him, they like to have the ball quite a lot. And, that could kind of be in your favour, to be honest, because this season you have played a bit better when playing on the transition and having to think less about what you do on the ball, if you know what I mean. But they have created the second most expected goals in the league. However, they have just scored the 6th most in the league. So, that's another reason they're missing Louis Barry. I mean, who wouldn't be, to be fair? He is a pretty good footballer, is he not? They also like to play it long, despite having the ball, and they love a cross as well. They bloody love a cross. We'll have a look at that in a bit. But they're 4th in the league for long balls and crosses, so you'll have to watch out for both of them. Defensively then, they've conceded the second least expected goals, but they still concede about a goal a game. So that's not great. But that is mainly because their keeper has made the least saves, per game, with just 1.6. I think I make more than 1.6 saves per game. So, it's not great, is it? But that could just be because he doesn't face a lot of chances, obviously. But he still should be making a bit more, I reckon. And he is a bit dodgy. And we'll have a look at that in just a second as well. But they do love a press. They're the 3rd best at it in the league, to put it simply. And, so it's not going to be easy to play out from the back. But as I said before, you should probably be playing it quick, transition, rapid, long anyway, if you get me. But as I've said before, the keeper is a bit dodgy. So let's have a look at the screenshot here. So this is from the Northampton game, just 2 games ago. And you think, Statman, why you show me a free kick? I can't blooming tell. It's a screenshot. Well, so it's about 25 yards out, you can see. And this happens, right? The second one, the keeper's blooming flapping his hands everywhere. And yeah, it does take a little deflection, but he gets a strong hand to it. It shouldn't be going in, and it does go in. It's very poor. So my advice, test the bleeding keeper. We'll have a little bit more in-play action now, shall we? So it is the next screenshot. This is also from the Northampton game. They get it wide to their wing back. They do play a back 3/back 5, but as you can see, they love a cross. They've got it wide, and they don't take it down the line. They don't run it down the line, then put a cross in. They put the cross in from there, the early cross. You have to watch out from that, because that is very difficult to defend, as you're about to see with the next screenshot. Anderson gets up like an absolute salmon, and he rises higher than everyone, and I don't know how he scores a header from there. He's got absolutely no right, but keeper can't get anywhere near it. It's a cracking finish, and he gets a lot of power behind it, despite not much power on the cross. So you definitely got to watch out for that. They love a cross, and they're blooming good at scoring them as well. Very dangerous. But this should be a cracking game, and I can't wait to watch it, to be completely honest. So we'll move on from me, shall we? We'll get back to the rest of the podcast, and I'm sure I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Well, there you have it. It is our Statman's preview, and it's certainly making up for a cracking game. It should be a real test for us, obviously coming up against opposition that are doing well in the league. But Chris, what are you expecting from that game?
Obviously, a response. I think we touched on it earlier before we came on that obviously we need to revenge what was a horrendous defeat away. Terrible performance. We need to put in a similar performance that we did against Birmingham. And I've done for the 5 games prior to last night. But yeah, it's not going to be easy. Obviously, it is the cliche 6-pointer, and it's one of those. It's one of those hoodoos that we need to tick off, which is an early kickoff at home against a team among there or thereabouts near us, who are also up the road. So yeah, historically, it's been difficult for us in games like that. But we've hit the reset and we go with a renewed sense of optimism. So yeah, it'd be a difficult game. Just looking at that in terms of aerial threat, that's a concern. It's something we'll touch on in Fan Focus in terms of defending basics. So we need to get it right come Saturday.
We do indeed. We do indeed. Dan, how are you feeling?
Yeah, optimistic as always. Under Schumacher, we always are, don't we? I think we're all madly in love with him in terms of what he does. Bounce back ability now. Obviously, we lost the first game against Reading, but he'd not really. I hate the fact that was a Schumacher game because he didn't have 100% or an unbeaten record, did he? But yeah, I think, as Chris said, there's quite a few hoodoos and Homans we can get rid of in terms of local rival team in and around us. 12:30 kickoff at home on TV. But I'm confident we will. I really am. I think we'll put to bed that 5-0. And the 5-2 in the cup the other year. Let's not forget that. That was probably one of the most abysmal away performances.
God, yeah.
But yeah, I think we will. They've having a little bit of a wobble, aren't they? They've had a couple of draws over the last few games, but a well thought out 0-0 against Charlton at the weekend. They've got a tough run in as well. I think they play quite a lot of the teams in and around us. But it's not arrogant, it's confident. Anyone that comes to the Fortress Reebok, we shouldn't fear. They should fear us. We should be winning every game at home, no matter who they are. And it goes to show that was how we dispatched the league leaders last week. So, yeah, I'm confident. I think we'll bounce back, and I think that last night was a bit of a reality check, bit of smelling salts to kick us on for the remaining 10 games.
It wouldn't be a Bristol Rovers post-match pod without a certain podcast joining us. Good evening, the Talking Gas podcast, assuming it's Mr. Haynes, inquiring to the location of Aaron Collins. Yeah, laugh it up, Haynes. Yeah, no, you played well last night, you lot, and you battled. I think it's going to set the tone now for the rest of the season in terms of the plight to survive. I think you'll be fine given that level of performance with the injuries that you had. So no, absolutely hats off to you. Where's Aaron Collins? He's in the playoffs.
We will move on again to this, our next segment. But thank you all very much for your contributions in the chat this evening. You've all been fantastic. And thanks to you all watching along. If you are watching, make sure you are subscribed to the Fanzone podcast. And if you tap the bell, you'll get notifications every time we're live. So you should never, ever miss an episode. So yeah, get liking, get subscribing, and we'll move over to Chris for our Fanzone Fan Focus.
Bless him. Go on, Charlie, lad. Yeah. So, Bristol Rovers fans lapping it up. Gotta love it. He's a decent bloke, that Charlie, so we'll let him have it. As ever, this segment is sponsored by our friends over at Wooden Grounds. As you know, Fanzone 10 is the code to use on their website for 10% discount off their beautiful, beautiful products. There's an array in there. Obviously, Bolton Wanderers related and other teams as well, if you have relatives who are so inclined. So it's the same as always when we well, no, it's not actually. In fact, what we're talking about is bucking the trend a little bit. Normally when we lose, and it's a bit of an onslaught in terms of comments, but relatively quiet this evening. But so feel free to put anything in the chat. But Michael has commented, and it's something that we've mentioned before, and I think it was mentioned earlier, the fact that you're always going to struggle for an automatic promotion slot when you're conceding so many goals. And his point is, and his question is a defensive overhaul needed for the new season, or simply a full pre-season with the current defence under Shuey's tactics? We are leaking goals at an alarming rate, and it needs sorting. There's nothing in there that I disagree with. A defensive overhaul, tricky. I think, obviously, if you look at the defence as it's been pretty much all season, it's been a constant rotation with injuries to Forrester, to Santos, to Johnston, Alex Murphy coming into the building, a change of formation most recently under Schumacher, the return of Chris Farino. There's a load of factors that impact on our defensive shape and lineup. For me, and obviously I'll put this out to everybody else, for me, I think it's all about consistency and Schumacher finding his sort of optimal defensive line and shape, and those players playing consistently together. We've not really had that for a long time. So, yeah, investment is needed, and I think it will be made. But I don't think it's a need for an overhaul as such. Dan, what do you think?
Well, let's not forget he's not had a transfer window as of yet. He's working with another man's squad and another man's players. There is going to be changes over the summer. There always going to be with the amount of players who've got out of contract, and it is a bit of a transition in terms of the changing of the guard with potentially Gethin and Rico moving on. We don't know for sure, but given our opinions over the last couple of weeks, it appears that may be so. Shuey will bring in his own men that'll fit his own style of football in terms of how he wants to play and the formations he wants to move with. But equally, he'll have a proper look at these boys over the next 10, 12, 13 games, as well as pre-season. We've obviously got this new Fergal Harkin as well on board that will obviously have his input and put his stamp on the squad. So there will be changes without a shadow of a doubt. Whether it's in need of a big overhaul, I'm not too sure, because quite a lot of the defenders that we've got were part of the squad that were probably one of the most solid rear guards we've had over the last recent couple of years. So, yes, there'll be changes. Obviously, he needs to bring in what he wants, but I don't think it's panic stations. I think that, a couple will go on free transfers and move on to pastures new with our blessing and our thanks. We will ship a couple out, and that's just not at the back. That's all over the park, isn't it? Will Dan Lunderloo come back? Will he go out on loan again? Will he move on? Will Victor come back? Will he move out? The Matete, he's on loan, so will we bring him back? There's all kinds of questions all over the park, but we've just got to trust the manager, and without a doubt, so far he's instilled that trust from everyone, I think, so far. But we need that. We've always said it, haven't we? We need that little bit of guile, that little bit of bite, that little bit of determination in the middle of the park, and a bit of experience, as Hannah said there, a defensive midfielder to protect the back four, back five. Thomason's doing all right, but he's been a little bit erratic over the last few weeks. And just look what he's done to players like Cogley and Morley and people like that already. So, yeah, there's naturally going to be changes, but I'm not panicking by any stretch. And if we don't go up this year, I think next year we'll attack it good and proper.
Yeah. Leslie, sorry, Ben. Les, just picking this up from Leslie talking about Cogley. Wanted apparently by Orient. I mean, what a transformation under Schumacher. I mean, again, he was missed last night, wasn't he? Sorry, Ben, you were saying, mate.
No, I was going to echo what's already been said. I think we've got to remember that these players, although being told to play a very similar way to whatever, the way that he played, that it's going to have its slight tweaks and its slight differences. And I think the reason we're conceding goals, or a lot of goals, under Schumacher will be a very different reason as to why we were conceding a lot of goals under Everett. And I think there is we should look to distinguish the difference between the two, and recognise, that a new McGaffer coming in with new ways of playing, new ideas, new instructions, is going to take some getting used to, and he's only been here 5 weeks. And I have no doubt that those players that kept the most clean sheets can get back to that same form.
Yeah, it begs the question as well, doesn't it? Come the end of the season, if we do miss out, there will be questions asked and fingers pointed towards Sharon, not in a bad way, but just why did you not make this decision in December or November? So then the new manager, Schumacher, could have had a transfer window. We could have had a lot more games to have a proper run at promotion. Had he come in December, we'd probably be in a completely different position than we are now. Again, it's all ifs, buts and maybes. But who knows? We've still got a fair crack at the top six. Second is still not out of the question. But again, as it's been said in the chat tonight, if we make top six after the season we've had, everyone will be delighted. So, and then who knows? Once we hit that playoff lottery, we've got the experience of the last few seasons, going in as the underdog as well, rather than the expectant.
Yeah,
I think will fit us, especially after last year going down to Wembley. Everyone had that chip on the shoulder, didn't they? I'll admit it. I thought we just had to turn up and we'd get promoted. And it didn't happen. So to go in as the underdog this year against teams such as Wrexham, Huddersfield, Stockport, that are spending the money that almost need to go up, little old Bolton, that's when we seem to perform best, isn't it?
Yeah, it's this is a good point, actually. You kind of mentioned Thomason there, Dan, in terms of erratic form. I think he was excellent on Saturday. He's looking more like his old self. But I thought this was interesting. from David. Let's talk why Matete is not playing so much, especially when Tomo is still not convincing. I think as well you need to factor in the fact that Jay Matete was pretty influential in previous Schumacher regimes, a favourite of his, and he's not been considered. Again, I think he's been a player that has been very, very erratic himself. Some weeks looking exceptional, and then other weeks looking lost. Any thoughts on this, chaps, in terms of Jay Matete and the unpredictable nature of?
I think it's interesting. Obviously, you mentioned there that Matete has had experience playing with Schumacher before, so it's interesting that he's not opted for him. I think Thomason being elected as captain midway through a season will probably play some role in that. Mm-hmm. He won't want to, completely isolate him. The last thing, anyone wants is for your captain to be. Not that I imagine him the type to be in a sulk, but you've got to look after him after what's been a pretty rough season, and him probably being given the armband quite unexpectedly, I would presume. But also, I think it's quite harsh to say that he's not been convincing. I think the Birmingham game was probably one of the best he's had in a Wanderers shirt. He was instrumental in picking up one of their deep midfielders. He was excellent on Saturday. So I think sometimes his critics are a little bit too harsh. I think, yes, he's got an issue with his temperament and can lose his head, but I don't think that's because he's stupid. I don't think he's, a bad footballer. I think he just tries a little bit too hard sometimes. So, yeah, I think saying that he's not been convincing is a little bit harsh. But I'm sure, he's already alluded to the fact that every player of this squad is going to be needed for the running. So I expect Jay Matete will get his spot sometime soon.
I think as well that obviously when he was suspended, Thomason was suspended, and when that suspension was lifted, he obviously he was benched, so he's had to fight for that place back. Yeah. And I think by and large, he's earned it. One thing that I want to mention, I'll throw out to you, Dan, that we're talking about George Thomason and we're talking about poor discipline and leaking goals. I saw a stat the other day. Is it something ridiculous, like 95 yellow cards this season? And the next closest was something like 70. I didn't digest it too much because it was like, I don't want to see that, thanks very much. It was like, move on. But I think, do you think that might contribute to the leaky defence? The fact that obviously you've got players on yellow cards who are obviously a risk in terms of a second yellow?
Obviously, it will have a bearing on it. If they get a yellow card, they're not going to be the same for the remainder of the game. But how many of those 96 yellow cards are Ian Evatt?
Yeah.
Ultimately, given his behaviour off the field and his amount of ill discipline and yellow cards, well, it starts from the top, doesn't it? I'd be interested to see the stats of bookings per game during the Evatt era and post Ian Evatt. But yeah, you're right. It certainly has a bearing on them fixtures as the game's happening if they're on a yellow card. But equally, if they're on 4 yellow cards, then they're obviously watching, making sure they don't get a suspension, aren't they? So there's all kinds of contributing factors. But the leaky defence is the biggest one this season. Whether yellow cards has a bearing on that, it's only, who knows?
Interesting, but as I say, relatively quiet on the Western Front. Things have calmed down since the new manager came into play. As Ben said, it's only been 5 weeks, and I think we forget that it's relatively early days. There will be an element of a new manager bounce, which will subside, but like I say, I'm not saying for a moment that that's exactly what it's been about since he came into the building. I think he is a breath of fresh air, and he's certainly fixing a lot of issues that were all too apparent very, very quickly. So keep the faith is what I say. We go on to Saturday.
Well, it's refreshing as well to see that over the last few months, we've had quite a lot of defeat pods. I know we've had quite a few 3-point pods over recent weeks as well, but over the recent months, we're quick as Bolton fans to fire shots at players and the squad and stuff like that. But it's refreshing tonight to see that the chat isn't like that. We're not like that. No. We're not pressing any panic buttons. We're not firing shots at certain individuals. It happens. We're going to lose football matches. No team wins every single game, do they? So you've just got to bounce back on Saturday, put it right, put 3 points on the board, leapfrog them into 5th, and all will be rosy again. Absolutely.
That's exactly what I was going to say to close off this evening's episode. You look at our next 3. If we can, pick up 7 or 9 points out of those, then all of a sudden it's painting an entirely different picture. Obviously, it's far easier said than done. But huge games to come, huge opportunities to right some wrongs of previous fixtures, which we'll not dwell on. But there you have it. It is an opportunity, and we must treat it as such. But until then, you've been watching the Fanzone podcast, sponsored by Eco1 Windows, who are our headline sponsors for this season. If you want to check out any of our sponsors, then if you head over to the Fanzone podcast website, which is www.fanzonepod.co.uk, you can find out all you need to know about them. What you will also find on our website is a relatively new page, which is for our sleepout fundraiser. And now, for those of you who have been living under a rock and haven't heard us banging the drum and mention it in every podcast for the last 4 weeks, we are doing the sleep out again for some bizarre reason. So myself, Chris, Dan and Ange will be braving the cold once more. And yeah, we need your help in raising some much needed funds for Bolton Wanderers in the community. And if you could help us do that, then that would be unbelievable. So like I said, that page on the website has got a list of prizes over there, so you can get your hands on some pretty, if I do say so myself, some pretty good prizes. We've got an array of different things. So we mentioned before our sponsors, Spud Grounds. They've kindly contributed one of their frames, so you can get your hands on one of them. There is an Aaron Collins signed shirt. And the latest we heard from the person who donated that, which is Jordan Hookway. For those of you who don't know him, he's a legend, a big supporter of what we do, and he helped a lot last time with the sleep out as well. But he's also said that if we hit £1,000 before the deadline, which will be on the night, I think he said, if we
21st,
so if we hit £1,000 before, then he will throw in some extra shirts. And now we've seen the shirts that he's chucking in, and they're some belters. I'm not sure. Should we tell them which one it is?
No.
Keep it as a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just the context on that then as well. Obviously, I think it's worth mentioning that the target of £1,000 is our pod target. We're at just under 60%. We're at 58% of that.
Yeah.
So those with a calculator will know that that's about 580 quid. So 420 quid to go to get to that magic 1,000. As David mentioned in the chat, £1,500 plus last year. 1,655 quid it was. Unbelievable effort. We need to get past that this season. So we can't do that without your help. So with these prizes, I'm optimistic. So keep them coming, and then we'll tell you what this other shirt is.
We will indeed. £10 per entry.
Yes. So as Ben said there's an array of prizes. There's obviously the Aaron Collins shirt. Don't forget the main prize, an exclusive limited edition Fanzone hoodie will be also up for grabs. 2 tickets for the Lion of Vienna against Bristol Rovers in the return fixture. So even you Talking Gas podcasters, while you're listening, get some money donated. And if we do get £1,000, Ben will do a knee slide again.
Yeah.
potentially break his neck as he did last year. But for all of us to sleep out in the cold. And let's not forget as well, there's still time. If you want to join us on the night, sign up via the Bolton Wanderers in the community website. Come and cuddle up to us in the dugout, and we can talk all things Bolton Wanderers while we freeze our nads off.
And other genitalia.
Yeah, and we will be freezing them off as well because it was absolutely Baltic last time.
All right, Ben. I don't want to know.
You wouldn't believe, Dan. It was imagine the coldest thing ever, and then times it by 5.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Not listening.
Yeah. I mean, the best way to describe it. Obviously, we've all been to night games. October, November, December, and through the winter months, we've all been at the Reebok on those cold nights.
It was actually hailstoning last time as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, badly. And obviously, probably the latest you'll be there is 10:30. When it gets to 11 o'clock, it's like, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't too bad. I'm used to it. Then all of a sudden, it just drops.
Yeah.
The temperature just plummets, and it is unbelievably cold. So
we got there last time, and I took my coat off. I was like, "This is all right. Not going to be too bad." And then I think it was about 11 o'clock, 11:30, when people started trying to get their heads down. All the layers went on, and it was still not enough.
Well, if we don't hit $2,000, I'm going home.
Right, but we're not having that happening. So. Get your hands in your pockets, people, because he's not going anywhere.
Radix Lecti, shaved head for Ben. No, this was in answer to another challenge. I said if we hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the season, I'll shave all my hair off.
You've shaved half of it though, haven't you? You've shaved these bits.
I have, yeah. We're almost there. I'm almost matching you both. A little way to go just yet. But yeah, if we hit 2K subscribers by the end of the year, then but not by the end of the year, by the end of the season. Then I will. I'll join the crew.
Right, we're locking that in because I think it was 2,500. I'm sure it was 2,500, not 2,000. So we're locking this one in.
Wait, let me see how many we're on first.
And then
1,500.
You what?
1,500. I tell you what.
That was it. Yeah.
If we raise 2,000, can we have it now, Ben? If we raise £2,000 on the night, I'll stay there all night and you shave your head.
Seems like a bit of an unfair draw here.
And if you shave your head, I'll shave mine.
Yeah, and I'll shave mine. We'll all do it together.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, if we raise $2,000 on the night, not our total target, but if we get $2,000 in donations on the night, I'll shave my head.
Oh, come on. It's not children in need.
I know, innit? Get Lenny Henry in. My God. Frightening. Anyway, your head's getting shaved, so
we've got to do something to occupy 12 hours, haven't we?
Yeah.
Trust me, the last thing you won't be doing is getting your hands out to shave my head.
Yeah. We'll do it. Get it done early doors. Anyway, sorry, Ben.
Leslie's called me a chicken, so I assume, Leslie, you'll be joining us and shaving your head as well on the night. And we look forward to welcoming you. And you can sit in the chair next to me and we'll both go bald.
Obviously, Lou will be there.
She will.
Oh, there you go. Right on cue. Maybe she is in need of a trim. Don't know. Just putting it out there.
Maybe. I think we've rambled on long enough about sleepout though. £10 per entry. Go and get your tickets using the link which is in our bio and plastered all over our socials. You should have no problems finding it. But for those of you who can't find it, I'll put it in the chat for you just before we close off this evening's episode, and you can head straight over and make your donation there. As Chris said, we are 58% of the way to our target. And any help that you can give, anything you can spare, would be absolutely fantastic. But you've been watching the Fanzone podcast. Take care. Hopefully a 3-point podcast to come on Sunday. And until the next time, take care.
Good night.